today's Big Finish audio drama review, we return to the events of the Time War, as I'm going to be taking a look at the first box set in a brand new series of box sets entitled The War Doctor Begins, in particular for today's review, Forged in Fire, featuring Jonothan Carley as the younger variation of the War Doctor. This release is available to order now on the Big Finish website. The physical CD box set is £19.99 and the download is £16.99. There is additional story details on the Big Finish website, as well as a trailer that can be listened to. And before we even get into the actual box set itself, full credit to Claudia Garroni, because she has created an absolutely gorgeous cover art this time round. A really lovely, almost painting design, of course, featuring and depicting a young version of the War Doctor who we didn't get to see within the TV series itself, which again marks the rather interesting new territory that this box set decides to present. Now, I must admit, I wasn't going to listen to this box set because over the past few months I have been quite busy and I've really needed to think about what Big Finish box sets I listen to and what ones I can dedicate a review to with the time that I have, because I've been busy with uni, work balance and life balance, and having a nice balance across the board. This box set was one that I found myself having a spare day, so decided to binge listen to it, and boy, was I glad I had that spare day, because this box set is treading on new territory. It's exciting, it's different, and it's not going to be for everybody. Admittedly, it is a bit of a risk, but I think that if you are willing to take that risk, and if you can see beyond the recasting of the War Doctor, this box set is most certainly one worth considering, especially for those of you that are new listeners, because this box set requires no prior listening in order to understand it. So to start off this review, and before we get onto the actual episodes themselves, I'm going to talk about Jonothan Carley as the younger version of the War Doctor, because I feel like that is no doubt why you are watching this review, to get my opinion of this new person who's came into the boots of a rather important figure within British TV and film history. Without a doubt, Jonothan Carley is stepping into some rather big boots to fill, but I think that this box set does a very good job of presenting his strengths. I think that Jonothan Carley is a superb War Doctor. However, he is not an impression, because that will be the wrong way to go down with this series, because we are not dealing with John Hurt's War Doctor. I like to kind of present this in my mind as John Hurt's War Doctor that we get to see within the 50th anniversary and the other Big Finish box sets is the result of the events of the Time War. He's the summarisation, the final chapter, and what we get to see within these box sets, of course, throughout The War Doctor Begins, is going to be essentially the character that creates John Hurt's War Doctor, the person who is the new fresh face to the Time War. He's yet to have those battles, he's yet to have those experiences within this incarnation, with the exception, of course, of the events of the 8th Doctor Time War series, and we are good to go on this journey with this new Doctor, and that is very exciting. Without a doubt, Jonothan Carley sounds like the War Doctor, he sounds like John Hurt, he's got the mannerisms in there, but he also brings something to the role which is different, and that is certainly needed. I'm looking forward to seeing his Doctor excel in the future, because I think that Jonothan Carley is a really brilliant actor. I must admit, there's a lot of emotion in his performance. He gets the outbursts right, he hits the mark. The beauty of audio is that you only need to sound like the person who you are mimicking, I suppose, and he does that mimicking so excellently well, but he brings something of his own to the role, and that is very important. It's clear that he's very passionate about this character, and likewise for the production team, I trust Big Finish to do something good with this series. I think that this box set is certainly a very good start. So we start off this box set with Light the Flame, as written by Matt Fitton. I think that this episode might in fact be one of Matt Fitton's finest hours in quite some time. What I really like about this story is that it doesn't shy away from the whole aim of this series. We are dealing with a younger variation of the War Doctor, and as a result we are going to see this Doctor from the very beginning of his era, because usually with some of the other Big Finish Time War media, they tend to shy away from the big events which have been mentioned within the TV show, the likes of, say, The Nightmare Child or The Gates of Elysium. In the context of this series, it makes complete sense, and what I like about this story, and what I realised when listening to this episode, is that this is quite a monumental moment within Doctor Who history, because this is essentially the War Doctor's equivalent to the Spearhead from Space, Robot, The Christmas Invasion. It's his debut story, marking the beginning of a brand new era, and as a result, It features lots of nice post-regeneration moments, but it's different to what we normally get in new series Doctor Who. I think there is this theme with the new series Doctor Who. The Doctor instantly falls ill after the regeneration and acts quite quirky for the vast majority of the story's runtime, and kind of finally realises who they are at the very end. This episode, in fact, takes regeneration down a slightly different route. We have a Doctor that instantly knows he is different, because throughout this review I'm going to refer to the War Doctor as the War Doctor. However, one of the main things that is different about him face on is the fact that he no longer goes under the title of the Doctor. He is a person or a warrior from the Time War, so we have him shrugging off people throughout this story, but more importantly learning who this new Doctor is. This is ultimately a very easy story to follow. We basically pick up after the events of the Night of the Doctor, meaning that we are on the planet of Khan and the Doctor is surrounded by the Sisterhood of Khan, and as a result, because the regeneration has taken place, Olia, who we do of course see within the Night of the Doctor, has contacted Gallifrey, and the Gallifreyans are coming to collect the Doctor and no doubt send him into the front line of the Time War. So it's really lovely to see Veronica Roberts back as Olia. I think that she does a great job, and it's nice to have that continuity within the story, and she's kind of the centrepiece of the episode. I like the way this story actually digs into the surrounding mythos of Khan as a planet and the sort of tensions between Khan and Gallifrey, the fact that Time Lord science has been elevated on Khan, however the Time Lords naturally think that they are superior, so you have a lovely element that I absolutely loved in the Brains of Morbius, digging into this rather interesting society. And then we have Anna Anderson as Lithia, and Lithia is one of the members of the Sisterhood of Khan, and basically she is companion-worthy material, and we kind of start to see the War Doctor take a liking to her character within the early half of the story. She is in fact one of the only people that he wishes to talk to, because she is personally connected to the Time War, and I think that her performance is wonderful. Such a brilliant and lovely character, and I like the way that her story develops throughout this episode. We have a rather familiar Big Finish name, which is of course Helen Goldwyn, who plays Commander Sanmar, and she's a Gallifreyan. And Helen Goldwyn, I salute you. You have possibly played one of the most hated characters I think that I've encountered on Big Finish for quite some time. You do horrible beautifully. She's a character that really got under my skin because she only cares about Gallifrey and basically preceding Gallifrey forward within the Time War, and she doesn't care what planets are affected within the course of getting Gallifrey to supremacy. A really lovely character, to the extent of the fact that I hated her. I think that was really effective acting, and again the way that Matt Fitton wrote her character, superb. It's great to have little links throughout the other 8th Doctor Time War series as well. For example, we get Commander Rasmus returning, who has featured within some of the 8th Doctor Time War adventures, and given that we have a new incarnation of the Doctor who's only just finding himself, it is great to have somebody who we already know from other Time Lord media kind of coming in as a little bit of continuity. As for Jonathan Carley's acting for this episode, I think it is a lovely story. I love the way Olia talks to the War Doctor, almost needing to persuade that final moment round to him that this is what he is now. He is a warrior and he is not the previous Doctor. He's aware that things are different, but he still needs that push to say, right, this is the Time War. And there's a great moment where he looks up into the sky and sees that things are almost burning and affected, and at that moment he snaps, and it is a really lovely moment. Again, monumental for this series, taking it forward. I'd also like to credit Howard Carter and Jack Townley for the music and sound design. Again, it is consistent to the other Time War media, especially the 8th Doctor series, and it is lovely. It makes this episode really cinematic and enjoyable and really heightens the tension. I think that one of the best choices that this series manages to do is basically keep the Daleks out of it until the very end, because episode 1 and 2 focus solely on this new incarnation of the Doctor and padding out his Doctor and kind of exploring who he is as a person. So as a result we move on to episode 2, which is Lionhearts, as written by Lou Morgan. Again, this is a really accessible story. I think that if you are an experienced Big Finish listener or somebody who is only just getting into Big Finish, this is a story that anybody can listen to and understand understand, it's basically a mission episode, and the Doctor is trying to figure out a way to involve himself within the Time War, however not instantly being on the front line. He's trying to contribute in his own way, which is kind of a theme that we get to see throughout the War Doctor series with John Hurt later on as well. So we basically have a mission in order to track down a character called Birok, who may sound familiar because Birok is one of the Tharals from the episode Warrior's Gate in season 18 with the 4th Doctor, and basically his species can walk through walls and dimensions because they are, of course, from E-space, and as a result they can make very good weapons to the extent of spying, so they can find out information. However, they have been imprisoned and the last of the Tharals are within a little bunker, and basically the Doctor needs to try and get the Tharals out alive. Well, I say the Doctor, in fact it is initially a mission for a Gallifreyan known as Larinus, and as a result we see her going on this journey with the War Doctor and one of the other Tharals in order to retrieve the other Tharals. And what I like is that this episode, again, it kind of delves into the Time War and the casualties of the Time War, which is a theme that we get to see within the 8th Doctor Time War series, within the early half, series 1 in particular. It kind of focuses in on 2 characters and how the Time War has affected them, and equally the Doctor has a lovely passion to save people throughout this story. What I like and what is mentioned within the behind the scenes is Big Finish haven't made this Doctor dislikable. I think throughout all 3 of these stories he is very harsh and he is very blunt, and he'll turn around and he has those sudden bursts of anger. He just wants to get the job done. He's a mysterious character, but that is not his main character trait. What I like is we are having harkbacks to the other Doctors. For example, throughout this story, I'm not going to say what happens, however there is a moment where the Doctor hatches a grand plan, and at the very end of the story we get him revealing that grand plan, kind of the how you did it aspect of the story, and it is very cunning, it's very devious, only he had all of the pieces, and as a result it's one of those manipulative moments that actually makes me think of the characteristics of the 7th Doctor, very much in his later half of his season on TV. And then of course we have the War Doctor's outbursts, and his outbursts only remind me of the 6th Doctor, because that is a rather consistent theme of his character. He does like a good outburst, especially when he is not getting his own way. So it's great to see that Big Finish haven't completely deviated from the previous incarnations. They are mentioned throughout this story and the other stories as well, but the wonderful thing about this box set is the War Doctor says something along the lines of the previous incarnations are being quiet. It's almost as if they are scared or ashamed, and it's kind of, it made me think of the 11 in a way, because the 11 has those personalities in its head, and we very rarely get the Doctor talking about his previous incarnations as if they are there in the present, but this story kind of suggested that, or that they are there lurking underneath and they don't quite know what is going to happen. We also have Adele Anderson in this box set, of course playing Commodore Tamazan, and undoubtedly Tamazan probably wouldn't have been in this series if it wasn't for the sad passing of Jacqueline Pearce, who did of course play Cardinal Elistra, and she plays a good role. I think that Adele Anderson brings something to the role where she's simply eager to get the Doctor to join the Time War. She's a great character. Again, we've seen her throughout previous Time War medias, so it's great to have that consistency. I love the way that this story is delivered. It's basically Larinus being debriefed by Commodore Tamazan, and she's telling the mission through her eyes and basically what happens, and then we cut to the mission actually taking place. It provides a really lovely way to present the story. It's very clear, it moves the episode forward, the pace is really good, but I like the way the War Doctor has this moment where he turns around and says, I would appreciate if you keep me out of the records so they don't know that I'm here, and we see the reason for that in the later half of this narrative. And what I love is there is a moment where we think this Doctor has done something rather bad, and we don't know until the very end if he has or hasn't, and it's kind of a judge on his character. Who is this new version of the Doctor, and could he possibly have done this certain thing that I'm not going to mention that other Doctors undoubtedly wouldn't, but maybe they would. It's one of those box sets where a lot of things are at stake and you don't quite know how this Doctor is going to act. It's a bit like the War Master in a way, where the main protagonist is completely unpredictable. And so we end the box set with the Shadow Squad as written by Andrew Smith, and this is the inevitable Dalek story of the box set. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really happy that they've kept this story until last, and very much like episode 1, this is a monumental moment for this series because we get to see the War Doctor's first interaction with the Daleks within the Time War. Of course, the first of many interactions that this Doctor is going to have. We see the Doctor arrive on the planet Etheria as he is on a little bit of a mission because he's found a signal or something going on and he decides to investigate. However, this story he is not going to be alone as we have him joining sides with Commodore Tamazan. So we have some lovely interactions throughout this story, and again it's great to see that this Doctor is kind of edging closer and closer to the front line. The first episode we have him acting alone, the second episode we have the involvement of Gallifrey and Commodore Tamazan kind of watching over, and then this story we have him edging closer to Dalek interaction and getting a little bit more hands-on. This story really relishes in the Time War aspect of the Time War itself, which sounds very unusual. However, a few Time War stories do kind of fall into a category of a normal war, and the thing with the Time War is it can go on at any point in time at any moment, so we can have people who create these monumental victories. However, the Daleks go back in time and basically kill them when they are born. So as a result we have that concept being explored throughout the story in admittedly another rather easy to follow episodes. If you're somebody who is a new listener to Big Finish, this is in fact a perfect box set for you because the stories are very straightforward and you kind of get quite a lot of satisfaction from listening to these stories and for once actually understanding and being able to weigh up all the aspects of the narrative because it's delivered in a way that doesn't daunt the listener. So we are introduced to Gallifrey's Shadow Squad, and this is a little bit of a minor spoiler, but I think is a lovely aspect of the story, and one of which that made complete sense, and I found very, very intriguing. So if you don't want to find out any mad spoilers, I recommend maybe muting this review for a few seconds. But basically the Shadow Squad have been isolated from Gallifrey for quite a number of years, in fact since they were born at the very beginning of their life, so they've gone through all of their regenerations in a bunker on the planet of Etheria. All of this time throughout life they've basically been planning this mission away from the rest of society, away from the Daleks, and they've been training because they've been in this bunker, and as a result they've not been able to lay a footpath around the rest of the universe. They have no links with the outside world, they've not communicated with anyone, so as a result it is very, very difficult to take them out of time because there has been no moments where they've had a monumental impact in history except the moment when it happens when they eventually launch their mission against the Daleks, because in this episode we're introduced to a rather unusual form of Dalek, which I adored listening to once again, which is basically a Dalek that can go back in time but also go forward in time. It's a bit like Dalek Khan, where he was a bit all-seeing, however he doesn't quite know where he is at all times. He's a Dalek that kind of exists in many different times, and as a result the sound design on this Dalek is very cool indeed. I think that Jack Townley has done an incredible job of really presenting this Dalek that isn't quite in the here and now. It feels like the Dalek is on drugs and you are kind of enjoying the experience with him, because I could imagine you're in like this whirlpool of time and the War Doctor is kind of facing off with him. It's a very cool Dalek throughout this episode and I love the way it's used. Again, I think that Jonathan Carley has some excellent moments throughout this episode. His interactions with the Daleks, he just wants to get the job done. There is a wonderful moment where he goes down a lift with a Dalek and says something like, "So is this your day job or have you been demoted?" or something like that. He's a Doctor that again has that sass, I think, of the Sixth Doctor, but he's also rather fresh-faced. He's a Doctor that's only just entered the Time War, and he's kind of not been tired and whittled down to the extent that we get to see with Sir John Hurt in the later adventures. This is a Doctor that is new to these events. Very much like all the other characters throughout this box set, I think that this episode is very well written. I think that the characters really leap off the page, and to be honest, overall, I found it enjoyable. I think that the Daleks are quite not ruthless throughout this episode, but they are a force to be reckoned with, which is enough. It's not just another Dalek story, it has another level to it. I think that Andrew Smith has done a great job of writing that, and overall, I found this series very enjoyable and excellent to binge. So So in conclusion, for The War Doctor Begins, Forged in Fire, starring Jonathan Carley as the younger version of the War Doctor, to be honest, a really strong start to this series. I'm aware that because the main protagonist isn't somebody who is actually from the TV role, that may put off some listeners, especially given that we've already had adventures with the late Sir John Hurt. Of course, those box sets are in fact now out of pressing when it comes to physical releases. They're only available on download, and I think that this series was certainly a risky one, but I think for those of you that do definitely take the chance and listen to this box set, it definitely has a lot of high quality moments. It's definitely an enjoyable box set if you are a fan of the Time War and the concept of the War Doctor as a whole. I think that this box set features a lot of monumental moments, such as the first interaction with the Daleks for the War Doctor, and of course his very debut, his opening moments after the events of the Night of the Doctor. To be honest, I actually recommend, because there isn't particularly any cliffhanger for this box set, I recommend, if you've got the cash, giving it a go. Simply giving it a go, seeing if you like it, and then that doesn't dedicate you to buying any of the other box sets, because at least for now, it does seem like a self-contained series, and it can merely be there to give it a go. Maybe even listen to the excerpt that's on the Big Finish website. I do believe they released the first 15 or 20 minutes. Maybe listen to that, see what you think, because I think this box set is definitely one that has a lot of good moments. I certainly found it enjoyable. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and I think that this series most certainly has a lot of promise for the future. I know that some people won't be able to get beyond the fact that this is no longer John Hurt, and that is fully understandable, very much like how some people simply can't click with the David Bradley First Doctor adventures. It is merely down to personal preference, but for me, I enjoyed this one. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content on a fairly regular basis. And of course on that note, have a nice day. I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.